Hello Kerbal Knots and welcome to my first video with 1.1. We've been waiting a long time for it, so I'm really excited to show you. This is Brendan the Kerbal Man, and I'm going to be starting a series on some skills you need for career mode. And for the gameplay in general. So today's version is going to look at how to get a craft orbit. And the very first thing I want to talk about is Kerbal Engineer. So with Kerbal Engineer, just helps us to get an estimate on how much delta V we need to get our craft to orbit. So this vehicle here gives us that information in the form. It just calculates it for you basically and does the math. It's a great mod. I recommend it in all my videos. You should get it. So if you're trying to orbit and deorbit a craft, you need a command pod, you need the parachute, and you need a heat shield. Boop. The rest of that stuff is just some science that I've added in there for a good effect. And if you're going to orbit, I made this mistake before when I first shot my video, you want to make sure you have some batteries that are accessible to your vehicle, to your command pod after you decouple, because you don't want to be stuck in an orbit going around and then not being able to, then losing control of the vehicle on re-entry. So I have two FLT 800 fuel tanks. You could also just use 4 of the 400 fuel tanks, but this is a little better for the sake of part count. If you have the upgrade to the FL 800, then you can keep your part count a little bit lower. And then I'm going to throw on 3 of the backs. And notice that I have them with radial decouplers, and I also have the winglets down here to help with control and stability. At this point, most rockets in the game in this version should have winglets on them. Not everything has to have winglets, but most of them do. I do want to point out that the parts and mass are going to be a little bit over the starting limits, and so you're going to have upgraded, at the very least, your launch pad. I'm sure it is possible to get a craft orbit without doing that, but if you're not an expert Kerbal Space Program player, at least upgrade your launch pad. It's a pretty cheap upgrade at the beginning of the game. And I'm going to be doing this without maneuveral nodes, because if you're playing in a career mode, especially at the beginning, you're not going to have maneuveral nodes to help you at your orbit. So if you don't have maneuveral nodes, you want to make sure that you pack a little extra delta V, because it's pretty difficult to fly the ship perfectly without them. So we're going to put our throttle up to 100%, and we'll start on launch. Notice that in my launch right now, I immediately turn on my SAS, and I shift the vehicle over to the 90-degree marker at the very start. And the reason we go towards the 90-degree marker is that the planet rotates in that direction, and so we're going to use the rotation of the planet to help us get to orbit faster and more efficiently. It is possible to get to orbit launching in any direction, but it's just less efficient. Especially early in the game, you really want to make sure you are taking the most efficient trajectory for your orbital launches. I have my solid fuel boosters. They're about to be going down in a second. And I'll decouple and fire off the main engine. Zoom out a little bit. There are some interesting features in the new version of the game. At this point, by the way, I'm trying to adjust the orbit a little bit to make it closer to 90 degrees. You don't really need to do much. All you have to do is monitor your apparatus and make sure that you're stopping at around 80,000 meters. You can do it all the way down to 70, but 80,000 is a good number if you have not been to orbit before. It's going to help guarantee that your trajectory, that you have time to make your burn once you get to space. So there are some cool features I will go over while we coast on up that have been added to the game. The first one I want to talk about is the introduction of the Chaospedia, which gives you an option to look at some of the, just gives you a wealth of information about how to play the game, how to get through the atmosphere, orbital paths, turning with the gravity to help you. Even talks about moment transfers, adjusting your inclination. So if you have a question and you've been stuck in the game, this is now a resource that's going to help you. So now that we see our prograde marker is dropping towards the horizon, which is when it switches from brown to blue, we are going to start burning hard in that direction. And we're going to have to burn really basically all of this fuel to get up to about 2,400 meters per second. And we want to keep our apoapsis ahead of us, so now that we see it's falling behind, we're actually going to shift our burn a little bit up. And I was talking to you about the Kerbalpedia that I'm really excited about and forgot to fly my ship. So this is going to be a little bit less efficient of a burn than I was really aiming for. So our apoapsis is now shifting over so that we're gaining altitude again. You just want to make sure if you fall beneath 70,000 meters, you're not going to be able to pull off the burn. But now we should be pretty good. So we're going to switch to prograde, and we'll complete our burn. If we zoom out and look at it from above, we'll be able to see that the orbit is actually orbit is getting wider, and if we come way up here, you can see the little dot where our orbit is going to emerge in just a few seconds. So once they spin around, we're going to hit stop. And now our apoapsis is a little bit higher than our preapsis. And what that means is we want to burn to radial just to circularize our orbit perfectly. This is not necessary. At this point, you are in orbit. You would get your contracts completed or whatever you're working on. But if you want to do it perfectly, you want to wait till the apoapsis spins on over. And that means that we are, pretty much in a circular orbit. They're starting to wobble a little bit because the, there we go. So if we complete that burn, we'll have it. So if you want to circularize your orbit, you want to get roughly to circular orbit and then use your radial to burn into circular. Now I am going to warp around the system to the other side, just so that we can land in the daylight instead of you having to watch me fly at night. At this point, you can perform your science. Like I said, having that battery is really important because, come on, that's a little problem I have right now. It keeps popping up because I will run out of fuel otherwise. There we go. So now that I am back on the light side, that's not necessary, but it does make it a little bit easier to see what you're doing, especially for your landings. We're going to burn hard to retrograde, and if you don't have the maneuver node, you just go to the retrograde marker at any time, and then you can hit Z all the way up. It is most efficient to do it at the apoapsis if you're running low on fuel, but any time's fine. And then we just want to lower our apoapsis until it gets under 70,000. This is a good number. 36 is fine. What you don't want to do is this. If I burn so that I'm flying basically straight down, so my orbit is really, really shallow, then I'm going to burn up on re-entry, because instead of slowly re-entering the atmosphere, I'm going to be shooting down, which means I'll have less time for the atmosphere to slow me, and my vehicle will be moving faster at a lower altitude than it would otherwise. So I'm just going to raise it up a little bit. There we go. So 40 is about the number I aim for, and that's going to be perfect. So now we're just going to warp ahead, and in a second we're going to lose our warping ability because we are now back in the atmosphere. And if you have a little extra fuel like this, you can now switch to retrograde and just burn to kill some of that orbital speed. We're going to run out. 3, 2, 1. Now we'll just decouple. And now we are basically in a free fall towards Kerbal. I am going to keep my SAS on retrograde on. If for some reason you run out of SAS, you can't. If for some reason you don't have, if you're not upgraded enough to have SAS as an option, you do want to make sure you have a pilot on the ship and that you log onto SAS manually for your retrograde. particularly if you're in an early level career mode. Now I'm gonna just boost on forward. We might experience slight turbulence as we go through the atmosphere. The game plays a lot faster, I have noticed in the newest update. I'm able to play on a higher resolution, especially while streaming or making a video. Normally I have to turn it down for that. I don't play on a very fancy computer at all. It's like a $600 laptop, but the quality of this is noticeably better. So now we are starting to burn up. There's not a lot you can do at this point. If your ship's going to burn, it's going to burn. What I am doing is clicking on my resources tab and turning on the arbulator just to see how much we're burning. Basically, if this gets down to 0, our ship's going to blow up. Or if our G-force stays too high for too long. I'm going to slow us down a little bit. We really need to stop burning pretty quickly. It's kind of funny, the sun is reflecting off the canyon beneath us and really making it bright. That's a new feature. The colors are really vibrant. There we go, and we are starting to slow down. Once the heat goes away, if you're really worried, you can always eject this, but you don't need to. There it goes. And we are starting to lose speed, and our parachute has turned white, which means we can officially launch the parachute. We will be landing in just a few moments over the Kerbal Desert. There have been some improvements, I think, to the texturing of the surfaces in this game. I noticed that with the ocean, too. So I'm just pulling out my little Kerbal Engineer just to see our altitude. Okay, we'll be landing in just a second. Kerbal Engineer, KER. It's a great little tool to help you fly your ships a little bit better without changing any of the actual gameplay. It just provides you with math and information about your vessel to help you make correct choices about how far it's going to fly, or your delta V, or your altitude. It's a really great mod. And it's already updated for the new version before it was released, which I really appreciate. Boop. And we have officially returned from orbit. At this point, scroll up, hit recover vessel, and you have completed the first step in your quest to conquer the skies. So, thank you for watching. If you have any requests, any videos you want to see, any comments about the quality of the video, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Once again, this is Brendan, and I am signing out.